Fletcher, producer and owner of the Asleep at Work Network, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the Hurdle the Line podcast. If you like what you hear, head to the links in the description, find out how you can get in touch and support the podcast, get in touch and support the Asleep at Work Network, and interact with our amazing hosts. But without further ado, more importantly, lads, it's over to you.
And welcome back to Hurdle the Line, our second ever episode. I'm joined by my fellow teammates Carl, David, Oliver, and Tom. I'm Chapman, and we are so glad you're listening, and we've got a lot to cover today. How's everybody doing?
Good, bud. Good. Good week.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
All good. Hope you enjoyed your Easter holidays.
True.
Yes, happy
Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter, everyone. Gentlemen, as we spoke earlier, we had owners meetings last week, and we have a lot of topics to cover with that. Let's do some fun stuff first. We have the first ever game in South America. There'll be the opening weekend game in Brazil. It's also the first time in 50 years that an opening NFL game will be on Friday night. And right now we know that the Eagles will be playing either the Packers or Oliver's Cleveland Brown. Oliver, what would it mean to play a game in Brazil, a big international matchup like that for the Browns?
Yeah, I think it's a massive deal. It's one of the biggest kind of markets in South America. A massive brand to kind of hopefully staple your brand into, and obviously if they play well. Hopefully, if they do get the game and play well, they can become the first team that a lot of fans over there see. And if that's their first experience with the NFL, seeing the Cleveland Browns, play good football, play well, and hopefully win the game, then that could sway a lot of people to, a new generation of Browns fans. So it's obviously massive for the NFL as a whole. And potentially if it is the Browns, then that would be a massive boost for their brand in the South American market.
Would any of you be interested in traveling to see your team play in South America at some point? Brazil.
That would be a great international game to go to, in my opinion.
Oliver, would you want the Browns to open their season against what were the flattest of flat tires of a playoff team, the Philadelphia Eagles, or would you be slightly nervous about that with what they've done this offseason?
I would, because obviously they're designated as the home team, so it takes away. If you could play as an away team against the Eagles on a neutral zone, a neutral stadium, then you don't have to play them at the Link, and obviously you don't have to deal with, what comes with one of the loudest and kind of raunchiest crowds in the NFL. So yeah, I would welcome playing the Eagles at a neutral venue. Especially if that counts as, the away game that you play against them that year.
One might say it would be an early Christmas present. Speaking of which, the NFL also announced that there's going to be 2 Christmas games this year. I believe last year there was 1, and now there's going to be 2 games. And Christmas falls on a Wednesday, which means teams could potentially be playing on Sunday and then playing again 3 days later. Let's go first. How does everybody feel about multiple games on Christmas Day, not depending on the actual weekday that it falls on?
Extra Christmas present, isn't it? When you wake up, more NFL games. No, I think the NFL are doing the right thing. I think it's on the back of seeing what they produced last year, production levels and audience levels. I think they thought they could probably put in an extra game there to engage that more fan personnel to be watching the TV. I don't know if it's going to be more, if they're going to split it on Fox and then CBS or NBC. That's probably still to be debated about. But yeah, it's good. And more games on Christmas Day for me is the best.
Are they going to have the games? Is it going to be like early, late games? Like on Sundays you have like 6 o'clock game and then you have like the 9:15 games, or is it going to? Are they both going to?
You'd hope so.
Going on at the same time. I doubt that, but
I think they would tailor it to the American audiences. So I would say they would probably do a late afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock kickoff, and then like a primetime game. That's what I would assume.
They tend to do that with Thanksgiving, don't they? They put an early, like midday one, and then the late-ish one. So yeah, they'll probably merge that one exactly the same. That's what I think.
Well, in Thanksgiving there was always the noon, the early game, and then there was like an afternoon, and then they added the prime time. So I would think it'd be the other way around, where they do because like that at least gives people an opportunity to have Christmas, do whatever, and then get settled in the afternoon. I think it'll be more difficult for us, obviously, to watch because it'll be 5 to whatever hour differences. So that's not fun, but we'll see. It's always it's interesting too that Christmas Day was always the NBA's day, and now the NFL is staking their flag even more so. So that's more interesting. Another thing we've got to talk a little bit about is the potential tampering that the NFL is investigating with both the Philadelphia Eagles and my Atlanta Falcons. Covering the Eagles first, we all know they signed Saquon Barkley, and his former college coach, James Franklin of Penn State, let it drop that Barkley had been talking to Howie Roseman, who is the GM for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that he sold him or that he had made a great sales pitch to him, which is why Barkley signed with the Eagles, which feels like a really dumb thing to say and very weird. Also, with the Falcons, Cousins in his introductory press conference mentioned that he had talked to the head of PR with the Falcons and some trainers during his speech previously that week, which also could not be the more Falconese thing to do. If they do end up getting in trouble for this, it usually takes a couple of years for tampering investigations to get settled. The most famous one was a couple years ago, obviously, when Tom Brady was trying to figure out which team he would be going to after leaving the Patriots, and the Miami Dolphins were hit with a first and a third round pick in 2022 because of tampering with both him and Sean Payton. Tampering, what do we think, guys? It seems really arbitrary. We have those 3 days before the league rear. Again, it just feels silly, kind of, but
yeah. I
agree.
I agree.
It's when you don't have these conversations at one point where it happens a week before the technical legal period or a week after. The conversations are still going to be had, so it just doesn't really. Yeah, like you said, it just seems a bit silly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think it happens
as
more.
well. If they already agree something in place, then when it actually comes to sign the contract and stuff, it's just that much quicker because they've already said that in principle, I'm going to sign, blah, blah, blah. And then it just streamlines the process anyway. So, I think it's just a silly thing, really.
Yeah, I believe it happens more than often. Maybe more behind closed doors. I know that I'm guaranteed there's probably more tampering talk than the actual talk itself when it comes to the day of signing. But I just seem it's silly. I think Tom, you just nailed it there, saying like, look, let's get everything pre-agreed, and then when it comes to the contract signing, bang, that's it. See you later, done. There's none of that back and forth. So, like I say, I reckon it happens on way more than it should do.
And what's interesting is it's not illegal for because Kirk Cousins talked about him communicating with Kyle Pitts. It's not tampering if players are talking to each other. But rather any team delegates. And during the legal tampering period, it is okay for agents of the players to speak with teams, but not players directly with the team. So I agree. It's a 3-day weird thing that seems like something that we have to explain. So why is it a rule? But anyway, if the Falcons and the Eagles get banged for it, it's their own kind of fault. I think in both cases, because more so for the Falcons, for Kirk Cousins, he should know better. But it'll be interesting if the Eagles get banged by a college coach in that case. So, so moving on, we also the big thing coming out of the owners' meetings, which is the rule changes, and we have 6 rule changes. I'm going to kind of just go over them really quickly for you guys, and then we can hit on the ones that we are interested in. One that I really am glad they changed is coaches make a third replay challenge if either of their first 2 challenges are successful. Therefore, if you win one challenge, you don't lose your challenge. So therefore, you can keep one, which is, I think, a smart move, because I feel like if you win your challenge, you should be able to keep it. The offense can now be assessed a penalty for a major foul on a play where the offense throws an interception or loses a fumble, even if the foul took place before the change of possession, and the defense also committed a penalty on the play. That one's a little interesting. Replay can now be used to overturn a ruling that a quarterback was down or out of bounds before throwing a pass. Replay can now be used to determine whether the game clock expired before the ball was snapped. The now infamous hip drop tackles are banned. And then finally, I think the biggest rule change is the kickoff rules have been changed to the low impact kick, similar to that which was used in the XFL. Goodell's comment about this is, I think it would be a big improvement. I think it will bring the play back to being an important play, a relevant play, an exciting play, and the injury rate will ultimately drop. Jump in, guys. What do you guys think about these rules? Which ones stand out to you? Which one are interesting to you?
I quite like the one, where they can review where their quarterback's in and out of the pocket, because there was a couple instances of that last year where, there was a penalty, but then when they go back, Gene Steratore is there saying, well, what, he actually was out of pocket, so it shouldn't have been a foul anyway. So I think bringing in replay for that, so you can actually just bring in that judgment, I think is a good thing for sure.
And what about the changes in the kickoff rules? What does everybody think about that?
Yeah, I've not really touched much. I haven't really seen. I know they've used them on the new one, the XFL. I'm not sure, because it gives the kickoff guy a bit more time to run out the end zone, doesn't it? And then as soon as they hit to the 25 point, that's when everyone charges for him. I don't know if that's a safety point to touch on there. I don't know if I want to see 11 men charging towards me after I hit the 25-yard line, but yeah.
Well, I think the safety, obviously, just before, when you've got everyone sprinting the full length of the field to make the tackles, obviously, to charge down. Now the offense and the defensive side of special teams are starting 5 yards apart, so it's a much less
impact,
close. It's less. Yeah, there's less running and downfield basically, and I think that's where the worry was. Just
that's collisions, right? I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there was some statistics that 30% of ACL injuries occur and happen during special team plays. So that, and obviously concussions as well seem to be up on special teams as well. So that's kind of where they were justifying the injury aspect of it, by kind of basically closing down the margin for injury by making less ground for players to have to cover.
So there's a lot more. I didn't think the kickoff should be this complicated to try and work out, but it absolutely is. So I'm just going to read you through this, okay? So the ball is kicked from the 35-yard line, same as the current rule. Safety kicks would be from the 20-yard line, same as the current rule. Here is the alignment, okay? All kicking team players other than the kicker will line up with 1 foot on the receiving team's 40-yard line. Kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until ball touches the ground or player in landing zone or end zone. We'll get into that further down. The 10 kicking team players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or player in the landing zone or in the end zone. The receiving team will line up as follows. A set-up zone, which is a 5-yard area from their own 35 to the 30-yard line, where at least 9 receiving team players must line up. I hope you're still paying attention to this, because I'm just getting lost here. At least 7 players with a foot on the B of 35-yard line, which is the restraining line with alignment requirements. Players not on the restraining line must be lined up in set-up zone outside the hash marks. All players in the set-up zone cannot move until the kick has hit the ground or player in the landing zone has hit the end zone. A maximum of 2 returners may line up in the landing zone and can move at any time prior or during the kick.
That's the key, I think. Having 2 returners on the field at the same time obviously opens up roster spots as well for good returners.
I think that's exciting. I mean, I call me a traditionalist. I mean, I thought the version that we just had of the kickoff has been boring, and you might as well get rid of it at that point, which I'd be okay with. But this is at least a version where there's still a chance that you can see an exciting play, a big return. I think it brings more strategy in terms of special teams, which I'm for. I like the three phases of the game, and there's going to be really smart coaches who are going to find ways to take advantage of this. And as you said, Oliver, it means more players on the field that could potentially do cool stuff. I'm really sad because we just let the greatest kick returner of all time go to the Steelers. It would have been great to see CP do some more damage for the Falcons. But yeah.
Well, Chapman, leading on from that, obviously with those new rules coming in, the Chiefs made a big move from the International Pathway program. Rugby star Louis Rees Zammit, just electric on the field. I think he ran a 4.45 without pads at their version of the Pro Day. So the Chiefs bringing him in, especially for special teams on those kickoffs. I can see him making a big impact there, and he's also being brought in as a running back / wide receiver. I mean, he's 6'3", so quite a big running back. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how
what do you think they'll be using him for,
Patrick
Tom?
Mahomes are able to utilise him.
What do you think they're going to be using him for? Do you think he's going to be your wide receiver? Is that what?
Well, I think he's going to. Well, I think on
team?
that new kickoff, I can see him being, the returner. I can see him doing that because that's what he did a lot of that in rugby anyway. Running up and down the field, and especially with the position that he played in, he was always, running through bodies and that sort of thing as well. But yeah, no, I could see him being utilised as wide receiver. If he's trained up right, obviously it's probably going to take some time to do that. Learn the scheme, just adapt. So maybe they create a few plays for him in a playbook, just to show what he can do. But yeah, really excited. He signed a 3-year deal, so he'll be able to develop and grow, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do really.
Yeah, so as a Welsh rugby fan myself, I think as David was asking what you should probably do with him, I think at this point I can't see him ever being a true wide receiver, and a true going to beat man coverage and run an actual route tree. But he's the kind of person, and he has the physical capabilities that you just need to get him the ball in his hands in space, green grass in front of him, and and what better place to go to than the Chiefs with Andy Reid to steam up plays, and whether that's out of the backfield, whether that's out of the slot, we'll have to wait and see. But like I think you said, I think it will just be a special team role early on, and you'll have to wait and see if he develops to have a bigger role in the actual offense.
Oliver, is this the first pure Welsh-born player to play in the NFL?
So there was a kicker, I believe, in the 70s. I think our producer Fletch has a better idea on this than me, but I'm pretty sure there was a kicker in the 70s that might have played. I think it was a couple of pre-season games. I'm not even 100% sure if he played an actual NFL game. But,
Alan Watson, apparently.
Yeah, 1970 Steelers. But for you, this will be the first in your generation to see it.
Of course, yeah. It's amazing for the country, and it was a shock at first to see one of your best young players, in the most popular sport in your country, in rugby, decide to try and make it in the NFL. But now that he actually has, made it onto a team and gotten, like Tom was saying, a 3-year deal, which is, substantial. Whether, how much money is guaranteed in that, I don't know yet. I haven't seen the contract, but still, it's a great opportunity for him. It's a great opportunity to grow the NFL and Wales and the UK as well, and hopefully get a new generation of fans.
That's awesome. There was also, speaking of the international program, there was also, I'm going to totally butcher this guy's last name, but there's an Irish player, Charlie Smyth.
It's Smyth,
and I believe he was a footballer, correct? As we spoke earlier. And
Gaelic footballer.
Yeah. Do not want to get that wrong. And who did he sign with? Or
he signed with the Saints.
Saints.
As a
now
kicker.
I hate him.
Yeah, in the division, but he really impressed at the pro day that they put on for NFL scouts, and obviously the Saints are taking a chance on him. So yeah, be interesting to see if he can make a roster, because obviously this doesn't guarantee that they'll make a roster, but give them time to develop and hopefully make the practice squad and develop from there. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad Sean Payton's not there anymore, because I'm sure he'd end up being a hybrid quarterback, tight end, linebacker, who knows what, and destroying the Falcons twice a year. But speaking of international players in the international program, we also had some global market announcements during the owners' meetings, and I'll run through those just really quickly. There were 4 new clubs that announced deals: Cleveland Browns with Nigeria, the Detroit Lions, Austria, Canada, Germany, Switzerland. The Indianapolis Colts are with Austria and Germany, and then the New York Giants are also with Germany. And there's 5 new markets that had deal teams, which Argentina with and Colombia, both with Miami Dolphins. Japan with the LA Rams, which Sam was here for that. Nigeria, which I just mentioned with the Cleveland Browns, and then South Korea with the Rams. Just in terms of the game becoming more global, is this interesting to you guys? Do you think we're going to start seeing, and again, we're really blessed here to have multiple games every year in London or in the UK, but do we think we're going to start seeing games maybe possibly in Asia, or other, obviously more places in Europe as we go on? And is that going to take away from our specialness in the UK, where we've had 3 to 4 games a year? How does everybody feel about that?
I don't think it will dismantle what the UK are doing, because they pretty much started this all off. But it's great to see it all get expanded out around the world. Me personally, we already know that Brazil will have their game to start with, which is fantastic. Something just tells me in the back of my mind that the next game we'll probably see live in a new country somewhere like Australia, because that's a big market they can aim for then. Yeah, I think it's good for the NFL. Obviously, everyone in the United States is going to be not very happy about it, because there's going to be one game. There will come a time where it will probably be too soon, but probably in about maybe 10 years' time, there's going to be one game a week where one particular game is going to be on international duty. And that's where it might cause. That's where it might cause a ruckus with the American fan base. But we don't know until that happens. Many teams now, they've got more partnerships from where markets have already started. So Germany, they've got a bucket load of teams that have now come to them. Detroit's one of them. Pittsburgh's one of them. Austria have come into the fold as well. Switzerland as well. So Nigeria as well. Nigeria for the Browns as well. So there's some good markets there to tap into.
I was going to say there, speaking of Nigeria, with Oli as well, Osim and Yura, pass rusher for the Giants and stuff. He set up a program in Nigeria to build the next talent, to make it to to college and then make it to the pros. So I wonder if you wanted to talk about that, Oli.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's the most populated country in Africa. A population of over 200 million people. That's a massive market, which I'm kind of surprised hasn't already been tapped into. But yeah, obviously grateful that the Browns were given the opportunity to be granted the marketing rights there. Kind of close to home with the Browns, kind of, I suppose, with David Njoku, Hakeem Adeniji, the new offensive tackle, and Obo Onkoronkwo, all coming from Nigerian heritage. And like you said, there's a lot of players throughout the league that come through Nigerian heritage as well as African heritage as a whole. So any chance to grow that market in Africa, whether that's for the Browns, just as their brand, or the NFL as a whole, is a great opportunity and good for the game overall.
Yeah, and I was reminded that there will be a game in Spain, I think in 2025, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be in Madrid?
Yeah,
that'll be in
Bernabeu. 90,000 capacity
definitely
stadium.
On the bucket list.
That's definitely worth a holiday.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's going to be in the Bernabeu or be in the Atletico Madrid stadium.
I think it'll be in Bernabeu. There's no way they have made $1 billion
Yeah,
billion
it's
euros
to do with
of upgrades, and then built a pitch underneath it to actually,
yeah,
I'd agree with Carl.
acclimate for a proper turf pitch. Although saying that, the way players are going down injured on turf, they might want it on grass. But that's a discussion. That's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, but there's a lot of rumours like flying around that it could be the Bears versus the Dolphins, which I think the Dolphins are making a push in that market of trying to go out internationally. They've got Argentina, Colombia, so it's more South American, Mexico based territory side of things.
Promoting Spain as well.
Exactly. That's
sure.
That's where everyone's kind of like pushing, or where.
Do the Dolphins need more countries? I mean, I think they've got by far the most market.
Lions as
Are you saying this from a football perspective or geographical nature sense?
As a football perspective,
Yeah.
I mean, they've been kind of the main team in the UK, from my own experience as well, and they've got, I think, by far the most countries that they're able to market their brand in. So, but yeah, like you said, it's still good for the NFL, whether it's a Dolphins fan or not. If they're a fan of the NFL, that's good for the game.
This is the thing, though. Is it more the NFL? Okay, yes, they push their brand to different territories, different markets, blah blah. But is it more as well for the knowledge of the game to get spread across those territories, and then players can like Nigeria, etc. We have Nigerian players in the NFL, UK ones, Welsh ones, etc. So I think it's more of those players wanting to know the game and then trying it up and blah blah. So I think it's more of that perspective as well. I think that's what I get.
I was going to jump in, and Carl, you were talking about the American perspective on it. I think the majority of Americans are not upset about games being abroad. I think it's more of them having to wake up and think of, if it's their team playing, and because I think it's exciting. I've gotten to see the Falcons play here twice over the last 3 years, and the Falcons fans that come out, and all the fans that come out from there, it's such a great experience no matter where you are. I would say also, just as somebody, as an American, it's really cool, and I touched on this a little bit, just seeing the game becoming an international game. Obviously football, soccer is such an international game everywhere in the world. It's played everywhere in the world. It's a much easier game to obviously play in terms of, equipment and whatnot. So and as David and Oliver, you kind of were saying, it's you kind of got to get people into football and explain it and do that. And that's a grassroots effort. Yeah. So I think just seeing it spread, as an American is really cool to me. And I'm proud of that, honestly. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's cool. I just don't know what all these. I mean, to me, also when I hear marketing, I'm also like, the NFL is just this money-making juggernaut, and if they just continue to find ways to market things to all these countries and keep making that money, so that's smart on them. They've taken a rule out of the Premier League, I think, in their international marketing.
Yeah, I've always found it odd how they've done their marketing with certain teams, having kind of blackout on where they're able to market their brand and things like that, compared to obviously other sports leading the world. But like you said, I think they're taking a leaf from other sports leagues and growing the brand globally, internationally, which is always good for us fans.
Yeah. Speaking of what's good for us fans, I know we all get really excited about hearing about bylaws. And what was approved in the league games. I'm not going to touch on all of them here. I think the one that was interesting to all of us was that the trade deadline had been moved to the Tuesday after Week 9 games, which was one move up from last year, where I believe it was after Week 8. Oliver, you had some thoughts on this from the Browns' perspective, I believe.
Yeah, so the Browns were kind of at the forefront of a group of teams that were kind of lobbying to get it pushed back even a week later to Week 10. And their argument was basically that when we went to 17 games, however, what was it, 3-4 seasons ago now, they never actually adjusted the trade deadline to fit with that. So it still stayed at the same period, obviously, despite having an extra game. And Andrew Berry even mentioned, with the potential of going to 18 games, in the near future, that they wanted to get it pushed back to give teams more flexibility and understand where they are that year to make decisions on their team and roster construction. Because let's say that the earliest that a team has been eliminated from playoff contention in the last 10 years is week 11. So if you got the trade deadline at week 8, there's a lot of teams that are kind of in that limbo period of, are we going to go all in? Are we going to sell the farm? So you kind of get more flexibility by pushing the deadline further back. So although it was only pushed back a week, not 2 weeks like the Browns were lobbying for, I'm happy, that it got pushed back and it got addressed in one way or another.
Yeah, and the other one that was interesting to me was that that teams can now elevate a bona fide quarterback an unlimited number of times from its practice squad to its active list to be its emergency third quarterback. So basically, that third quarterback on the practice squad can now just be an even more important spot for some of these teams. And you can also use it to stash, which the Falcons actually used to do a while back. I don't know if it makes a huge difference.
Does that mean that they'll dress for game day then, the third quarterback?
I believe so. You can do it as many times as possible, yeah.
Just helps the 49ers a bit more.
Yeah.
And the Browns last year.
Yeah. So that's really it. There's a couple other designated, but there's nothing huge here. I am excited about we will be getting more of the Hawkeye video technology in the 2024 preseason. The Atlanta Stadium uses it almost every other game. If you guys have seen some of those Bijan cuts, it will be used in it will have full implementation in the 2025 season. So we'll all be getting it in all our stadiums soon, which is exciting. I just wanted to go back to one rule change, just to throw this out to everybody. It says we can now replay can now be used to overturn a ruling that a quarterback was down or out of bounds before throwing a pass. And then the other one was replay can now be used to determine whether the game clock expired before the ball was snapped. That second one to me feels like it could really start to slow down our game a little bit because, man, you think about it, there's a lot of times where it's really questionable. And the last thing I want is more flags and more replay. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I was just thinking, I read that and I was like, man, I get it, but it just feels like now that's another thing you can challenge. It's another 10 minutes in the game.
Imagine what if they'd had that when it was the Cowboys, in the playoffs where they weren't able to get a snap off and
Dak,
the game basically.
Yeah, but it struck 0 before they slapped. Let's not give the Cowboys any credit here, shall we? Let's not.
No one deserves praise for the Cowboys.
No, definitely not. But it will be an interesting one because it just, as you said, Herman, it elongates the game. Even if it's that extra few seconds, they might take a timeout before that, and then, it just extends it even more. So, I think they should just keep it as it is. But
yeah, that's what I was basically just about to say. You've got the 6 new rules that they've implemented, but 4 of them seem to be, apart from taking away the kickoff and the new hip drop tackles. Those other 4 are all time consuming things, so extra replays, extra stopping. I mean, the NFL a game, what are you talking, 3.5 hours per game? So how
4
many
hours, unless you was watching the Colts Broncos game a couple of years or so ago.
Every Browns game last year that just was 20 minutes longer than every other game that was going on at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, does this give an opportunity to give more breaks? There's more money in advertising, etc. So they're going to throw in these extra replays. I don't know. Again, it's marketing. So, but yeah, I'm a bit on the edge on what really to think about those 4 replays.
What do you guys think about the hip drop tackle though? Because obviously, that was quite a controversial one. I don't think it's the hip. I think they described it specifically as when they
is it
hold the player down onto
it's leaving your. I think it's when you leave your feet.
Yeah.
So if you've engaged you can leave your feet to engage the tackle, but you can't engage with the tackle and then leave your feet, drop your body weight to bring the player down.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's
which obviously
that's the process which causes the injury. Well, the one that Mark Andrews got. But then how do defenders now tackle from behind? It's going to be really difficult to officiate, and then obviously with that happening, there's probably going to be way more penalties because there will be people that do it, won't there? So
I mean, how many hip drops were there, Ollie? You might know.
There were over 200, I believe, last season.
Yeah, they did a presentation in the to try and get the ruling over thing, and they highlighted loads of plays where it was used, implemented, and injuries resulted from that. But going kind of back to the replay thing as well, they made it non-replayable as well. I'm pretty sure. So it's going to be a very subjective. You're giving all of these referees that already get kind of blamed for every decision. They damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're giving them something else that they need to keep an eye out for, and it's something that they've never had to keep an eye out for before. So there's going to be a load of subjectivity, controversial decisions. And personally, I think they'll probably just call it every time in the pre-season, first couple of weeks of the season, try and just outlaw it, basically throw out a load of fines, and then trying to hope that they don't even have to call it because they basically outlawed it. But it's one of those. Anything that prevents injury, but it's just the way that they've gone about it, I think, is not the best way.
I think you're right, Ollie, as well, in terms of the subjective aspect of it as well, that if referees are already making enough decisions, yet alone to have to make another one that then could really affect the game in a negative way, or a positive way for another team. So it'll be interesting to see how.
But they should be getting communication from New York, shouldn't they, straight away? Similar to what footy does in VAR. They should be notified if it's a tackle, if it's a foul or not. Like with instance, I don't know.
I suppose it depends on what team you are as well. If you got like me personally as a Browns fan with David Njoku, now that no one can tackle him from behind, basically, no one that's obviously going to be a good thing. If teams that have these players, like someone like a Derrick Henry, how do you now tackle him from behind? When a lot of players have been using this technique, quite frequently throughout the last few years. But yeah, like you said, especially with the replay, I still have no idea how, with all the money that is in the NFL, we don't have a proper sky judge system like we see in other sports. Even rugby has, the TMO, which is arguably a better system that we have than they have in the NFL with the replay system.
The only problem
going back to what you said, David.
Yeah, the only problem with the TMO and rugby is, it elongates the game from the aspect of, they're taking 4 or 5 minutes to, look at this and look at that. And if they bring that into the NFL with how long the games are, anyway, obviously it'd be a good thing in terms of, they would actually be able to come up with the right calls and stuff for penalties and all sorts of stuff. But again, it just adds to that aspect of making the game even longer.
Yeah, obviously rugby has the benefit of not stopping after every play, so they can use a longer replay system. Like you said, that wouldn't work in that format in the NFL. But I just don't understand how we still haven't got to like David was saying, a proper. How can we not have New York basically say whether this decision was right or wrong, rather than leaving it down to the referees on a lot of decisions?
I think that's a big sea change, though, in the NFL as the rules have changed quite drastically over the last 10, 15 years. There's more things for them to watch and more rules, and I think historically, though, the refs have, for lack of a better term, gotten it right, and as it's gotten more complicated, I guess you should say, and they're not full-time employees and all sorts of other things. It's been tougher. I think the refereeing has been noticeably lacking over the last couple of seasons, and I think and it's hurt the game, especially when there's more penalties. I just again, I don't really want to watch a game all the time with holding and whatnot all the time. It's just not fun. I really hate the QB sack rule where Grady Jarrett gets called for it all the time, where he'll sack and he'll pop off, but he'll still get the 15-yarder even though his weight's on it. It's just such a hard thing for these guys to do. And anyway, yeah, it's interesting. And that leads me to a question for you guys. If you were, let's say, Rich McKay, who's the head of the competition committee and also one of the leading exec outside of Arthur Blank of the Atlanta Falcons, and you could propose to get rid of one NFL rule of your choosing, what rule would that be? I'm going to start with Tom.
Yeah.
I
would say for me, I wouldn't get rid of it, but I would adapt it. The one you just said about the rough and the passer call. It just seems like any play that gets a call back below a certain level of their body like is called roughing the pass. I mean, I look, but you obviously say the one about Grady Jarrett. Think about the one with Chris Jones where he took down Derek Carr, got the ball, recovered the fumble, and then it was called roughing the passer, and the Raiders kept the ball. You know, things like that. It just seems like, you know, pass rushers can't do anything like what they're supposed to be able to do. You know, take down the quarterback. It's a physical game at the end of the day, and you are going to have people like slam to the ground and stuff like that. But yeah, it would. That's one that I would change for sure.
What about you, Carl?
Have they done anything on the rule where if you fumble the ball into the end zone, it goes out? Have they not?
Touchback.
Personally, I think that should be revoked, not to be turned over to the other team. I would say go back to the original play where it started. So, say for example, you start at the 18-yard line and you get to the ball, you end up going in for a touchdown, but the ball where you fumble it on the way in, that play that's a loss of down. So, say if you was like 2nd and 18, you're going for the touchdown, you fumbled it, but it goes out the end zone. That should be a loss of down. 3rd down, replay it. 3rd and 18.
Isn't it fun though to see a team go 99 yards and then fumble it into the end zone?
It's hilarious. It's always hilarious.
Oh,
We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen so many times.
As long as it's not your own team.
I'm saying this as a fan that saw the.
I was going to say. I know what you're going to say.
I'm also going to say as well, not just through the NFL perspective, but also through the fantasy football side of it. How many players have been so annoyed where they're starting, where their wide receivers got it. Yes, he's got a touchdown. Oh no, he's fumbled it. Oh no! It's like bang goes by 6.5 points or whatever it is.
I think I know exactly what Ollie's going to say. Daniel Sorensen in the game against
had to deal with the whole fumble into the end zone in the playoff game against the Chiefs, which I don't mind the rule. Anything. I mean, there's so many rules in favour of the offence anyway that I don't mind the rule. Obviously, going back to that certain situation, it wasn't the fumble into the end zone that annoyed me. It was the blatant head-to-head collision that Sorensen did. But yeah, I that's one of them that I think is kind of I have a controversial opinion on. A lot of people seem to not like that rule, but in the end of the day, I think there's so many rules that benefit the offense.
That's not a controversial opinion. That's just the refs not doing their job. At the end of the day, it's a blatant helmet. It's a blatant helmet-to-helmet hit.
Oh no, yeah, that's separately. I mean, that was just me. That was just me reminiscing my anger.
The worst one was
I meant
the
rule
Rams,
is in fumbling in the end zone. I don't actually mind, to be honest.
The worst helmet-to-helmet though was the one with the Rams against the Saints. Like, how was that one not called?
Yeah, that was no, it wasn't helmet to helmet. That was just blatant pass interference.
Yeah.
Don't mind it. Didn't see it. Oliver, speaking of, what would be the rule you would try to get rid of?
I'd get rid of the taunting penalty. Personally, I mean, if you score a touchdown, if you have a great play, I feel like you should be allowed to, hang your stuff almost to say it in a polite way, to kind of brag about it. And I have no issue with a player. In the end of the day, if he's beaten me, as a DB and a wide receiver beats me and catches a, Randy Moss style over me, he deserves to be able to celebrate in that moment and kind of have that one on me. So I would change the rules on taunting. And then just as a fun one as well, I'd probably swap the coin toss for an arm wrestle or a game of rock paper scissors or something like that.
We'll put it this way: if this was the modern day version of the film The Longest Yard, Stone Cold Steve Austin would have got a flag for taunting.
Definitely.
Oliver, if you had to pick one player in your team, who would go out and do the arm wrestling then?
You see, that's tough because you'd think, like, personally as a Browns fan, I'd go Myles Garrett, and then in the back of my mind I'd be going, yeah, but what if he tears something while he's doing something as silly as having an arm wrestle and somehow injures himself in a something as silly as that? So you'd probably just get the strongest kind of back of the roster kind of player to go out there and do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ollie, with the taunting as well. Even looking back at the Chiefs game against the Ravens, there was a great play by Zay Flowers, and it was called taunting. even I watching that game was like, why don't you allow that? Because players play, they should be able to celebrate. There should be obviously
Takes the fun
over
out of it.
celebration is a thing.
Yeah, there's a line, of course.
There's a line, but
they've made that line way too low, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's stupid. It just staring at the opposing sideline. What's that doing? It's you're just staring. You're not even doing it. You're just staring over, and then they just throw the flag and say no, 15-yard penalty on the kickoff. It's just become a little bit. It's just become a bit soft. It's just become a bit soft, this game.
It's very NFL. It's very modern corporate NFL. David, what would be your rule change?
So my rule change, I wouldn't change it, but I'll try to amend it slightly. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did they not try in the Super Bowl that just went past, it was Chiefs 49ers, where in overtime you win the coin toss, you get to choose if you defer or you take the ball. They've taken the ball, and then you get the opportunity to either score a field goal, or if you score a touchdown, game's over. I would try to let the other team try and get the touchdown as well.
Hey, if you score a touchdown, the other team still gets a chance.
They changed
that rule.
They changed that now.
Is that going to be now going forward, or is that just a one-off game?
Yeah.
But then obviously you've got all the other stuff that goes. Even though they've changed it, there was obviously Kyle Shanahan still got
because he said he didn't know the
kind
rules.
Of bombarded for taking the ball, which is obviously the idea of if you go second, then you know what you have to do. You have 4 downs.
Yeah,
basically.
4 downs.
If that was the old rule, then obviously you want the ball first. But now this is a brand new rule. You do what you do in college. You defend first.
Right, okay.
I don't know if you saw on Rich Eisen. Obviously, it doesn't matter now with the new kickoff rule. But before the new kickoff rule, he basically said, "Well, why don't you just attempt an onside kick? Win the toss, elect a kick, attempt an onside kick, and if you recover the kick, then you essentially only have to go 50 yards and you'd win the game because you've taken their possession away from them." And I was like, that would take a lot of gonads for someone to do that. But either way, it doesn't matter now because they've changed the kickoff rule where you have to announce that you're doing
you may have just given Dan Campbell an extra bit
motivation. It doesn't matter now because you have to announce when you're doing an onside kick with the new kickoff rule.
Of course you do.
You can only do it. Yeah, you have to win that. So that obviously there's no more surprise. There's no more.
See, again, that takes another fun ability out of it.
Yeah, exactly. There's no more
with
surprise
overtime, they do it now. So if you score a touchdown, then the other team gets a chance to score a touchdown, right? Don't they?
Yeah.
Then they did that because of the Chiefs versus Bills game. Obviously, that's why they brought in the rule, wasn't it? Yeah.
But again, the team that goes second, and if let's say the team that goes first scores a touchdown, takes the extra point, the team to then go score their touchdown, go for 2, and you win the game. So there's still a benefit, kind of analytically they suppose that going there's still a benefit to one side. So how much?
Exactly, and that's why Kyle Shanahan should never have taken the ball, but give it back to Mahomes.
Yeah, you should definitely at least know the rules of the overtime.
The other rule that
which one to pick.
that I thought about taking away was the PAT. I think points after the touchdown should just be taken. You should just go for 2, or you keep the 6.
That was my next. I have that written down. That was literally my next point that I was going to say.
I don't know, man. I'm
quite happy with the PAT.
I am too because think about it. San Francisco wins the Super Bowl potentially this year.
At least give it a bigger incentive to go for 2. If you're not going to get rid of the PAT as a whole, at least give a more a bigger incentive to go for 2. I mean, just as a fan, I want to see more offensive. I mean, I think 94% of extra points are converted pretty much around that number every year. So it's almost a foregone conclusion. Obviously, you get the odd, oh no, my team missed an extra point. But
then I agree with David on that point.
Or you could kick it.
A big moment in the game though as well. I know you say that 94%, but that 6% when they're like, oh, but now it's only a 6-point game rather than a 7-point game, and later in the game they have to drive down and win the game or something like that.
Either that, or you can decide to say, right, okay, if you're going to go for 2, you do it on the 5-yard line, or if you want to kick.
Well, you look at teams.
If you want to kick,
they have a penalty,
then further back
for it on the 5.
Further back, like 20, 25 yard, or to make it a bit that harder to get that extra point. I don't know.
I bet our friends in the desert, and by them I mean Las Vegas, will probably, and that's a very American term, but I think they'll make sure that the PAT stays around for a little longer. There's already sharp lines enough that they enjoy that. So my rule change, just to throw another one in there, is the inequality of offsetting penalties, and that say an offense could be driving down and a 50-yard PIT could get called or something like that, and then there's some sort of Mickey Mouse penalty that's a 5-yarder because somebody wasn't set or something like that, and then it's basically just a repeat of downs, and the defense gets away with with an egregious call, or sometimes could go the other way. I feel like there should be some sort of weight to penalties in those instances where there should be, if it's an egregious or a high, let's say there's a tier of penalties and it's a high tier penalty, then there's still something assessed on the play, whether it's yardage or whatever. I don't know exactly how that would look. Again, it's just makes it more complicated. But that was one that I also had the same one that Carl had too. I think the fumbling in the end zone is just silly, because I got to watch Desmond Ridder fumble a lot this year, and he, of course, in the multiple ways that he fumbled this year, he, of course, at one time fumbled into the end zone. So, anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Chapman, because if it's like two penalties, they're exactly the same. If it's two 15-yard penalties, then it's fine to offset that, right? Whereas, I guess what you're saying is if it's a 50-yard PI versus a 5-yard false start, how does that, that doesn't quite quantify, does it? Yeah, so I could see that, definitely.
Or if it's an egregious, let's say, hit on the quarterback and there's a hold. I don't know, so it just depends. But that would be one that I would have him take a look at. Well, that's kind of it for the show tonight, guys. It's been great talking with anybody. Does anybody have any last minute thoughts? As I said earlier, I've been watching a lot of Braves baseball this weekend, so I had a nice little break from NFL news because none of it was really good this weekend, to be really honest with you. But anyway,
obviously we had. Sorry, carry on. I was just to say we obviously had the start of the UFL kicking off this weekend. Obviously, my San Antonio Brahmas, I'm not entirely sure how you say it. Only just became a fan 2 days ago, but obviously they got off with a win, and obviously, I mean, I'm sure we all agree it's good to see any kind of form of American football played, and with the merger of the two leagues, I think it's going to be a good thing and hopefully become a kind of bridge in between the NFL and a lot of these players to hopefully get a chance, kind of like second chance, kind of thing, as we said.
And it helps our off seasons too. It means that we don't have to wait as long for the NFL season. Yeah, we got
not
more
just that. It gives the players like you just said, a second chance, because there could be some potential upcoming players there that are not so well in the NFL side, but go into the UFL and they destroy it, and they could well get another chance in camps. So, I mean,
going to Desmond Ridder, I could see Desmond Ridder lighting up the UFL.
It'll make him
in the next couple of years.
It'll make him inspired. It'll make him hungry. It'll make everyone on the field want to actually be there. Yes, the callback play is going to be sloppy, but guess what? There is also bad callback play in the NFL as well. So you're gonna get that sometimes.
And you actually had former NFL. Was he picked in the second round maybe? But Matt Corral.
For Stallions.
He was playing at the weekend.
Played well.
I watched that last night.
Yeah, he threw was it a 60-yard touchdown near that or something?
Decent,
obviously he threw a pick as well, but he played pretty well.
Well, it's good to know that I have such football junkies as co-hosts on this podcast, because everybody loves more football in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. But it's really great to see everybody tonight. I want to thank Carl, David, Oliver, Tom for co-hosting, our great producer Sean and Fletch. We are part of the AAW network. Really glad you guys listened, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in to Hurdle the Line.